Header Footer Gallery and this podcast are part of the New Media Caucus, an international nonprofit association formed to promote the development and understanding of new media art. We represent and serve artists, designers, practitioners, historians, theorists, educators, students, and scholars. Recognizing new media art to be inherently interdisciplinary, multimodal, and evolving, we support and advance a wide range of inquiry to catalyze further evolution in the field. The New Media Caucus is committed to extending and sustaining the diversity of our community, board, and membership, to promote an environment of equality, inclusion, and respect for difference. We prioritize inclusion as an ongoing collaborative process of growth that we continually address, both within the caucus and in our field.
Welcome everyone to Header Footer Presents. In this episode, we will be talking about the beige dystopia, surviving our stealth dystopia through art. But before that, I want to thank Constanza for being here again after a few absences, and also for taking over when I was the one that was absent. I think she did a fantastic job. I hope everyone enjoyed that recording.
Thank you.
But yeah, so first of all, let's define what a dystopia is, and then what is a beige dystopia, because we cannot start this without talking about that. So, what is a dystopia? This is a basic Google definition, but I thought it was close enough. So it's an imagined state as in a country, basically, or society in which there is great suffering or injustice, typically one that is totalitarian or post-apocalyptic. And this is a very popular thing. And specifically, the type of dystopia I'm talking about is the cyberpunk dystopia, right? Mm-hmm. This dystopia that's centered on technology, corporate control. This is your William Gibson's, I hate this one, but Ready Player One, your cyberpunk. I don't know if you want to add a few more.
Oh, there's many. You see this in novels, but also in video games as well, like the cyberpunk series too, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so dystopia is a very popular genre that has existed for a long time. Yeah, but there's something different between dystopia and beige dystopia, which you're going to talk to us about today.
Yeah. So first, like a quick thing, like this is one example of how we see dystopia in our minds, right? Like this is Blade Runner 2044, the new one. Obviously, this is like concept art. But you have like all the signifiers, right? The neon signs, the very urban, always Asian influence, which is a little bit racist, I've heard. I mean, I agree that it's very fetishizing, right? It's inspired in Tokyo. It also has like a lot of inspiration because of Japanese animation, specifically Akira or Ghost in the Shell, to name just two of many, many dystopian fictions, right? Mm-hmm. And then this is Cyberpunk 2077, same deal. You can see these high rises. It's always this gigantic buildings, gigantic ads, and a lot of neon. That's one of like the main signifiers. It's also a bit retro, generally.
It is. I think what they described as futuristic is now something that we consider very retro.
Yeah.
Right? Which is really interesting in itself.
Yeah, it's the synthwave aesthetic, what they call now synthwave, which back in the 80s was the 80s. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But yeah, well, it also depends on where you're talking about. Like a lot of people imagine the 80s as this very neon place, and I don't know how long you had consciousness in the 80s.
Who,
but yeah, you
wasn't born in the 80s.
Oh, you see, you had zero consciousness in the 80s. Okay. I was alive for most of the 80s. But obviously, I remember things from like 5 years onward. So 88, 89. And there was a lot of wood paneling involved, mm-hmm. and a lot of ugly yellow fabrics. So that's one of the things. Like one of the critiques I always heard about, like, what's it called? Stranger Things, was that it didn't look like the 80s. And I was like, no. You're thinking about rich people 80s. This is what like normal people 80s look like. Anyhow, but we see these retro aesthetics, right? Like the angles everywhere. And then you see like the corporate things. But there's always this air of coolness, right? I think that we can agree on that. I don't know what you think.
There is an element of coolness. There's this air of it for sure. But I think it's because of the aesthetic itself and how futuristic and how it's supposed to be or seem progressive, right?
Yes.
Technologically, at least. But like in the novels or in the video games, for example, there's always the dark side to it. That I think is also important to point out as well, right? The dark side of all this
Yes.
technological progress and maybe not so bright or neon aspects of it, right?
Yeah, the this in dystopia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's good that you bring up the aesthetic aspect because that's one of the things that I want to highlight in this whole argument that we're going to make is that dystopias that we imagine are cool. Even the bad things are cool, right? In a way, like I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that it looks cool. Why? Because when you're making something narratively interesting, you have to keep the attention of your readers, your viewers, whatever. So there's this need narratively to create something that's attractive, visually or stylistically attractive, right?
Stylistically attractive, but also in the realm of possibility, especially as technology progresses. You know, you always think about, for example, in this particular case, what about enhancements, right? And the
Yeah.
extreme versions of those as well.
Yes. There's also this very like coded thing about it. So, for example, in dystopias, obviously one of the big bads is corpos, right? Like corporations that are controlling governments and everything. And that's communicated through these stylish outfits and these very sleek, often Nazi-inspired aesthetics in their cops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you look at, for example, what's it called, Judge Dredd, like they all look very like right wing 1940s kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem because we've been trained to identify dystopia through this very visual like language. And also when you look at the people like the heroes, for example, in this case, this guy, he's wearing a leather jacket. A leather jacket is made by hand. Obviously they're not making it like a fancy, like leather jacket. It's a rundown, like probably inherited kind of leather jacket because that, and they're more rounded, they're less angular in their design, so that brings them into this realm of natural, and as an opposition to the digital slash technological aesthetic of the bad guys, right? And that
Could
brings us, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, what I've seen a lot in these dystopian in terms of like the video games and the novels, but there is a class issue. I think that you're also identifying, you know, with these people that are wearing, like the heroes wearing the leather, these heroes wearing the rundown versus the corporate that are very sleek, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's also important to identify as well. And this is going to get into your argument later on.
Yes, and that's interesting too because going into Cyberpunk 2077, people think it's a really good game. I don't agree, but whatever. One of the main things is that you can be a nomad, which is like someone who lives in the wasteland, what they call and it looks basically like an abandoned version of Arizona. Um, but there's those. Then there's like the street kids, which are like, in a way, what we would call urban.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So most of them are Latino or black or Asian, but not the rich Asian, right? And that's how the game codes it. And then you have the corpos who are very stylish. You start wearing like designer outfits, really fashionable. They are from all the colors and everything. But there's like a certain level of class in how they're depicted. Their skin is cleaner, their outfits are not damaged, etc. But the main thing that happens when you choose to be a corpo is that you lose everything right at the beginning of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you come in this world from the top, you have to be at the bottom to be a hero,
I
right?
also wonder, perhaps not wonder, but I think a comment needs to be made about accessibility to technology and how that has become a class issue, at least in the novels and the games, right? Because, for example, I remember, I'm not sure if it was Cyberpunk, the video
Hmm.
game, but your accessibility or your access to technology becomes very, because I know my partner played this game,
Hmm.
it becomes very difficult just because you have to go through back ways or the black market, or, you know, that kind of thing to access technology versus, you know, people that are in higher class. could potentially have, because they have the means. I don't know how that also plays into that as well.
Well, it's funny though, because I was going to say the opposite.
Oh,
In dystopia, generally body modification and body like alterations, like extreme body alterations, are very accessible. Like if you
really?
look at edge runners, they're all like gang members, but even like the waitresses have some degree of body modifications, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things in the game, for example, is that the corpos look less robotic. They may have the same amount of modifications, but the corpo modifications make you look human, whereas the poor people ones make you look like a 1980s monster truck.
Right.
So, but it is accessible. Like you see people who don't have arms, who have fully working articulated arms, which is a fantasy for most people right now. And the only people you see is like influencers, like this. Nothing against her. She's a really cool person, but like she's this girl that became very famous because she got these robotic arms. But most people don't have that. They have like a more static plastic hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in our reality, access to those things is not as easy as it seems in cyberpunk. In cyberpunk, one of the things is that everybody's modified, and
I,
we're going to touch on that in a little bit, but I want to jump back and define what a beige dystopia is. So what I define, this is not a term that anybody has. I mean, let's make it happen. Hashtag beige dystopia. It's a very real state or society in which there is great suffering and injustice, typically one that is totalitarian and post-apocalyptic, but lacks the visual signifiers of traditional dystopian fiction. So first, let's appreciate my very cheap trick, which was taking the definition that was presented by Google and just transform it a little bit.
right.
But I want to hear what you think about this before we jump into explaining, like showing examples.
Beige dystopia. Definitely one of the first times I've heard of this, not in this presentation, but in our prior conversations.
Mhm.
I do agree there is a lot of suffering and injustice. This has always existed, however. But the term I think is signaling something that has progressed into what you're going to discuss and elaborate in this episode, right? And I guess one of the questions I have for you in terms of this definition is, do you think we are living in a post-apocalyptic world?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's knocked by us because it doesn't look cool. So no, that's literally the thing. I was on TikTok again, dystopia. Uh, I was on TikTok and someone was talking about self-driving cars and how they're choosing to drive over a child over harming the driver.
Hmm.
And some people is like, I'm actually in a dystopia, but where's my cool flying car? And that's
Mm,
kind of like what started this whole thing for me. The
I
idea
see.
that we are living a dystopia. Maybe it's not post-apocalyptic, it's probably apocalyptic by now. Uh, but it is there. Like we're there, at least in the dystopia. Let's not say post-apocalyptic, but totalitarian in this topic, we're absolutely there. And what the main thing that I want to like people to walk away from this episode is that it's not by us because it's not cool. And even when we have the warnings from artists, and this is not just like popular artists, because I will cover them. I do consider their opinions valid, but also like from traditional people who we talk about, like Marina Abramo. Well, not Marina, but let's talk about like Olia Lialina or, for example, Sterlak. Even they still have the cool factor that
Hmm.
real dystopia, beige dystopia doesn't have. And so I'm going to show you examples. And obviously, we're going to walk into some iffy, touchy things, but I'm going to try and be as fair as I can be. But for example, everybody knows this. This is the Charlottesville March. This is what. So when we imagine like the bad guys in, say, Star Wars, you imagine the black costumes, the black outfit, the uniforms, all these things, right? When you imagine the dystopia of the Hunger Games, you imagine these people with like very Renaissance inspired outfits. When in reality, what we got for fascism is white men wearing shirts and khaki pants and tiki torches, right? It doesn't look as scary, so it slips past our radar. Another example, before we like Brooklyn, before gentrification, Brooklyn and gentrification is a super complex thing, right? But we're gonna focus right now on the aesthetics of dystopia. And Brooklyn went from this place that had a culture and identity, a certain type of communities who existed there and who had like a really strong ties to not only Brooklyn, but the rest of New York,
There was
into
a
this.
culture. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a culture, exactly, and completely shaped by the immigrations that happened there. And now what we have in Brooklyn is high rises, but they're not the cool high rises. We have squares of glass, and that's it, and
Mm-hmm.
white. And nothing looks cool. It just looks safe, right? And this has to do a lot with another aspect of cyberpunk. And I'm using cyberpunk not as in the specific game or the books and everything that comes before it, but the genre itself. And it's the corporations. Corporations control everything. And we see this in America, we see this in Europe, we see this everywhere. But it's not, again, the cool version of corporate. And cool is visually appealing, not cool as in good. The very bland version of corporatization of our lives, right? And so, well, you live in Brooklyn. Like, how do you feel about this change? Like, have you seen it?
Well, I haven't lived in Brooklyn for necessarily that much time. I've
Yeah.
been in New York for 10 years now. It will be 11 years in October. I have seen some changes in which mom and pop, what do you call it, businesses have
Yeah.
left or they have been priced out, right? And in
Hmm.
turn, what happens is they build these giant monster skyscrapers, or tall buildings that are very expensive, etc. Um, there is one funny story that I will share very quickly,
Hmm.
and that's the Eye of Sauron Tower that live where the
Yes.
it's located very near to where I am, where I live in a very short building, but it's enormous. The Eye of Sauron is this very tall black tower where people live in it, right? It's a residential
Hmm.
building. And there was you know how they have Sunhenge, or I'm trying to remember what the name of it was, but it's when the sun sets in between avenues
Oh, okay.
and then
Uh-huh.
people go and take pictures of it. Well, this particular case, I think it was a couple weeks ago or a week ago, people were getting together to take pictures of Eye Sauron Henge of the
Yeah.
sun that was at the pinnacle of the tower. And so it
Oh, between
definitely
the spikes?
between the spikes and it definitely looked like the Eye of Sauron, which was hilarious. But a lot of
Yeah.
people hate this tower because
Yeah.
it is unlike for sure these white buildings that, you know, cover most of Brooklyn now, or at least some parts of affluent Brooklyn.
Mm.
Um, and so it stands out against these, but maybe it could be a separate counterpart to your beige dystopia.
Well, I was gonna say something about now that you mentioned that because I remember seeing the Eye of Storm last time I was there, uh, before the extra dark times.
Hmm.
So one of the things I've noticed is like in between, what was it when I was there the first time with you? 2019?
No,
2020?
no, 2023, I would say.
2023.
I
Well,
think
that's even
so.
better for my argument. Okay, so let's say it was 2023. No, it was 2022 because I was in Barcelona.
Okay.
2022. So in 2022, I did the stuff, some like curating stuff in Connecticut, and I would stop in Brooklyn with Constanza because it was, well, you land in New York, so it was like, hey, let's visit Constanza. Just from then to my last visit last February, which is like this year, 2025, like 6 months ago, the changes were massive in my eyes, but maybe because you've been there, it's like it doesn't. It's like the boiling frog thing, right? Like the water turns the heat up like little by little, and you don't notice it until it's too late.
Yeah, you
And
become
yeah,
desensitized or just
exactly.
it just becomes part of the landscape, right? Which
So
is
to me, it
scary.
changed a lot. To me, Brooklyn changed a lot in between the first time and this time. But
Hmm.
also, uh, don't you find it funny that the scary ugly, well, I don't know if ugly, but that's open to interpretation, but like the scary building is the residential one and it's not a corporate one?
Yes. It
Like,
is.
right? Like it's also funny and funny-ish. But yeah, so this covers everything, and that's what I want to talk. But before anything, I want to tell you a story of the internet. And Connie, you feel free to jump in at any moment and add your stuff or correct me when I say something incredibly dumb.
Sure, yeah.
Uh, so in the beginning times, back in 1994, when we were all young and innocent, we believed that the internet was a tool of equality and freedom. I don't know why I put colons there, but okay. Um, we believed that it was this moment of everything is going to get better. Everyone is going to have access to all the information in the planet, the information superhighway. Fascism will never rise again because people will be informed. Yes, about that. So the internet has changed so much in between the 90s and today, right? And one of the things is right now that we are not noticing is this thing that it's getting a lot of traction, and I want to cover it really fast. I mean, it's part of this dystopia thing. The dead internet theory. The internet theory, first of all, is a very problematic term because it started in right wing circles using the idea that they, with parentheses, that's a dog whistle for those of you who don't know, for Jewish people, were trying to destroy American culture by destroying the internet and filling it with what they called woke ideology using AI. And that the AIs would take over the internet and generate like all this fake news, which is what they call fact. Um, and some people started grabbing this idea, getting rid of the fascist language, and arguing that there's this thing that's happening where AI now is feeding off of AI and it's generating more AI stuff that's completely useless. And we see this with things like we covered before, the AI generated articles, right? Like 2025's best printers to buy. Like, I mean, is there really a best printer between years?
Hmm.
No, there's no. And to the point that Engadget made a protest about this, and it was an anti-AI ad, but Google has it as the best recommended page when you look the best printers in 2025. And it's because all of these things are done with AI. So if you've noticed that the internet has gotten worse when you Google, that's why. It's because the internet is feeding, well, the AI, the web pages are feeding off of AI.
Hmm.
And so, for example, if you want to improve your searches in Google, write whatever you want and then put minus AI and then in this another space, and then you type before colon 2023, and your search results will improve massively. But obviously, you won't get anything post 2023. The minus AI removes that annoying, what's it called? Summary that's always
Oh,
wrong.
right. Hmm.
The one that tells you to add glue to your pizza. So yeah, so ignore that, please, please. If you're a student listening to this, do not believe that. It's always wrong. It doesn't get the context. I've seen so much mistaken information, and I've fallen for it. And then I'm like, wait, this sounds weird. And then I check. Oh, yeah, of course it is. Because sometimes you don't. Your brain kind of filters, and you don't realize that it's the AI Gemini thing. But anyway, so that's the dead internet. This idea that it's feeding off of itself. I don't know if you want to add something to that.
No, I'm curious to know about anti-intellectualism, actually.
Oh, wow. That one's easy. Okay. Anti intellectualism. That one is very easy to talk about because, well, you see it everywhere. People telling you that it's better to not have a humanities degree, for example, or saying that universities are woke, or that it's cultural Marxism, which is a dog whistle, if I ever heard one, because that was the same thing in the 1940s. It was called uh, Bolshevik. I can't pronounce this, but
Bolshevik?
Bolshevism.
Yeah.
Bolshevik, but it was like Bolshevism, like cultural Bolshevism, which was again they with parentheses, um, which is again not a cool thing. So we have that. At the same time, I need to make a parenthesis and say something. It's really important. Everyone should have access to an education in universities if they want it.
Hmm.
Not everyone should be forced into a university,
Hmm.
right? Because that's how you get students who are just coasting by. Higher education is important, but it's for those who want it. We should not be making anyone feel bad for wanting to be a housewife, an electrician, a bus driver, or any other profession, whatever it is, right?
Well, I think the issue with that is, yes, there is a tendency to push, this idea of university forward, but it's also because of the business practices that
Of course.
universities have taken. So there's that as well, right?
Yes, there's an over valuation of STEM
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to the point that's become like cultish and fetishistic. This
Mm-hmm.
idea that you have to create people who are only mathematicians, computer science, and physicists and engineers. Anything
Mm-hmm.
else doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very bad approach because you need, if you like shows, you need people in the humanities, you need people in English degrees. Also, English degrees are really good for stopping things like the next point, fascism, because you need an educated people. Educated people doesn't mean they have to be able to interpret something like Finnegan's, what's it called?
Well, I think what you're trying to
Or,
say
yeah.
is that it's important to have critical thinking skills
Mm-hmm.
in order to not only discern it's very similar to media literacy, right? And this is
Yes.
the idea to discern what is real versus what isn't. In
Mm-hmm.
nevertheless, despite the fact that it has become very difficult to do in these past couple of years because of AI too, right? So
Yes.
that's even more important to be able to instill critical thinking skills and media literacy to our young students as well.
Exactly. And these two are tied. And anti-intellectualism and fascism have always been tied hand to hand because it's easier to control an uneducated population, right? And if you make wanting to be smart a bad thing, it's easier to have people not want to be educated, right? So the internet has been really good for this, like by privileging certain types of people, certain types of actions. I don't think I'm stretching the truth if I say something like PewDiePie or Mr. Beast and all these people whose only job is creating shock, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's easier to have people hooked into that than having people discussing anything beyond that. And you see it even in discussions of movies who are very clearly anti-fascist and how people are like, oh, it's not that deep. I hate that phrase. It's just a movie, bro. Which is
Mm-hmm.
like, no. I mean, I agree. And this is one of the last few times you will hear me agree with Freud in that not everything is phallic. Okay. And I hate that I have to change my language because that's part of the problem that I'm going to cover in a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But this control of language is really annoying. But, anyways, not everything is phallic, but you have to be able to tell when it's phallic from when it's not phallic. Sometimes a spoon is just a spoon, a pipe is just a pipe, a cigarette is just a cigarette, but it's not always. And the point of being able and to be media literate is to tell when which one is which. And saying it's not deep, bro, it's not enough. Anyhow, moving on. AI. AI is one of the very complicated things. I have a very complex relationship with it because I do agree that there's fields where even LLMs, which are not exclusive, when we talk about AI, everybody thinks LLMs are the only thing that's AI. LLMs like large language models, so things like ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, blah blah blah. That's not the only AIs, and even those have their uses. But we're using them for every. They're a hammer, and we're seeing everything as a nail. There's places for LLMs. There's places for all things. For example, when I was editing this thing, I copied a PDF, and when I pasted the quotation that I wanted, it put one letter, a return, a letter, a return, a letter, a return. For me to fix that would have taken me like 20 minutes. I fed it into an AI and it's like, don't change a word, don't editorialize, don't do anything, just make it readable. And immediately turned it into a paragraph. That is a good use for AI because that fixes a problem that I have. For example, when I do AI, I'm sorry, AI, I don't do AI. When I do the editing for these episodes, I tried to cut the awkward spaces that we have sometimes, like when you're thinking and you're going or something like that. I would kill for an AI tool that can identify those spaces and get rid of them. I do not need AI to write me a TV show, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other problem is that we're using AI to replace creativity. And it's using creativity to get rid of creativity. It's stealing things from authors, from artists, from everyone. And it's okay, apparently, to do that. But if you copy a movie, you're going to jail. So that's a problem. Well, and that's not even touching ecological issues, which is a completely extra complicated thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, so AI is a very complicated thing because, like you are saying, it is an umbrella term that means so many things. It could be LLMs, general adversarial networks, AI art, etc. And I think just to go back to how the internet used to be before, there was this promise of liberation and
Mm-hmm.
freedom, but also of having information at your fingertips, which in itself is very liberatory, right?
Yeah.
But things have changed drastically, and and that comes down to the things that you're going to talk about next, kind of like
Yeah.
cryptocurrencies, deepfakes, misinformation, which is a huge problem right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
um
completely.
mhm.
So, cryptocurrencies, I don't really have much to say.
It's pretty self-evident,
It's
I
pretty
think.
self-evident by now. NFTs just crashed and burned. Bitcoin is just being used for crimes, but now crime is legal, so that's a different thing. But yeah, it's just basically, but it's one of the most cyberpunkish things because it's wrapped in the language of revolution and dystopia, anti-dystopia,
Hmm.
while being the most dystopic of them all, right? They talk about liberation from the banks. Again, dog whistle.
Hmm.
They're talking about freedom, like banking Dion Bank being accessible, but it's not, right? You need a lot of knowledge, you need a lot of devices, and if something goes wrong because the ledger is unfixable by definition, otherwise it wouldn't be a ledger, you're screwed.
Hmm.
So it has a lot of problems, but it pretends to be a solution to dystopia while bringing more dystopia into the business. And you can see it because now corporations are getting into it. You probably have, if you have anything like a retirement fund and they're doing investment, they're probably involved in cryptocurrencies now. So, maybe check that because you shouldn't be that. Deep fakes, which is also, I think, very linked to AI, right? Like, I'm not crazy.
It is, but it's funny that you put deepfakes on here because it used to be a hot thing back
Yeah.
a couple years ago, and now it has transformed into something much scarier, right?
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm.
terms of like AI generated people, for example, that have
Mm-hmm.
become pop stars and things like that, like, which is something that you're
Oh,
going
yeah.
to touch upon in
Yes.
later. But
Mm.
deepfakes, yeah, it's a thing that used to be in the news, especially as this new and scary thing. And then now we don't even talk or think about it like that because we have again become desensitized to it, or it has just become commonplace and has transformed into something even scarier, I
To
think.
be honest, what's the need of faking someone saying something if you can just say, I didn't say it, even though there's video evidence? Like, why go
Hmm.
through the effort,
Yeah.
right? So it doesn't matter anymore.
But I
But it's funny. It was the apocalypse for a while.
but I think it ties back
It's still
into
horrible.
it is. I think the problem is that it ties back to misinformation. And for
Mm-hmm.
those people that are not media literate, and we can include here quite literally the older generation too, that
Yeah.
perhaps older generation, but also the young generation that are most at risk, I think,
Yes.
as opposed to not going to say the millennials are above everything else, but we grew up with this technology, and so we have seen the change from what it used to be, at least in this particular case, the internet, how it used
Yes.
to be before to how it has changed so much, right? Which is
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily the case in a similar way to like the older boomer generation versus the young Gen Z alpha generation, right? So there's
Yeah.
that. Hmm.
So, I mean, you covered misinformation basically. And pretty much all of these could be misinformation as well.
Uh-huh.
right? Like deepfakes, cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrencies, not really, but yeah. Um, One thing I forgot with cryptocurrencies is also that fascination we have briefly with Meta. No, what was it called?
Which one?
The worlds that was like basically World of Warcraft, but was going to take over the world.
Metaverse?
Metaverse, thank you. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
thing. That's also in cryptocurrencies. It was tied to that. It was born and bred out of it. VR was kind of stapled into it. Thankfully, it didn't work. Hey, VR has never worked, but that's a different story. But yeah, so misinformation was this thing that's like that permeates the entirety of the internet, right? It's the exact opposite of what we thought was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have corporate control, which is why I cannot say the actual word that I wanted to say and had to say phallic. And it's corporations control the internet and all the platforms that we have. I've said this before in this podcast, you can only be as rebellious as the corporations want you to be, right? And it's really annoying because on YouTube, for example, this is happening. I love watching analysis of horror movies, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's basically a blurry screen of anything that happens in the movie. So they're talking about, there's this fantastic video podcast called The Kill Count. If you never watch it, watch it. It's fantastic. And they count how many people die in the movies, but it's also interspersed with production notes and critique. And like, it's deeper than it sounds. And little by little, if you watch a video from like 10 years ago to one today, before you could see, oh, the person having their head squished or whatever. And now it's a blur. Everything is a blur. Like most of the video now, it's just blurry backgrounds
Mm-hmm.
because YouTube does not want to lose corporate sponsorships. And then, I know you've noticed this. Like there's this little thing on top on the right on YouTube that sells you things, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're selling me the same movie that they're censoring.
That's
Are you
hilarious.
welcome to the dystopia, literally.
But this
So
also goes hand in hand with what you're going to talk about next, which is censorship.
yeah, I mean, it's the same thing because our
It's,
censorship is corporate, basically.
yeah. But it's funny because, and when the internet was just emerging, right? And everyone was so excited, the one thing that sort of was the nail in the coffin was the censorship that happened in like the mid 1990s,
Yeah.
and it was the government censoring all these what they declared obscene material, which in one
Yes.
way I understand, but in the other
It's
way
tricky.
it's very tricky. And that's where you come and have people like John Perry Barlow, who has his foundation. Then you can look at this up. We can also link this in the podcast.
Yeah, of course.
John Perry Barlow was an advocate and one of the people that wrote, as the story goes, his Declaration of Independence of cyberspace. And he wrote it on a napkin. And I think it was, as the story goes, it was in
Mhm.
Zurich after he heard about the Censorship Act that I
Yeah.
think it was President Bill Clinton enacted because of what they declared was obscene material. But that is a very complicated term, and what is deemed obscene can mean very different things for different people and with different interests in mind, right?
hmm Yeah, and it's always in the name of children, but it's never about the children. For example, SESTA FOSTA are two of the biggest pieces of legislation in the US, and now they're being used against the trans community, the LGBT community, and soon it'll come after women. If you think it's not, I have a bridge to sell you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, and there's all this alliance, and it's always tied to moral panics. And I understand that we have to protect against children against certain content and things like that. But the way it's being done is by people who do not understand the systems, and B, by people who are trying to manipulate the system to create this moral landscape,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to be very careful. Right now, we have this thing of identification to access certain websites. In the US, it's not as insane, but I don't know if you learned that in the UK now you have to give your ID to a company, to a corporation, to confirm that you're an adult, so you can access Wikipedia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Wikipedia. We're not even talking about like Pornhub. We're talking about Wikipedia
Mm-hmm.
because it's considered a risk by some people, including J.K. Rowling, if there's any need to hate her even more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's become a very good tool for control and censorship, and claiming that it's to protect the children. Now you can't access Wikipedia, and they want to block VPNs, and there's this whole thing, and it's being done by very old people who do not understand the web. But yeah, so we have that, and then we're moving to something that's tied to everything, because everything that we've cited above and then below, it's the lies of Web 2.0. You know what Web 2.0 is, right? Or should I explain it? I don't know.
Let's explain it to the audience.
You want to take it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So Web 2.0 is what happened after the dot-com crash bubble thing, where the idea is that the new internet was going to be an internet that was personalized, that you controlled your internet, you saw what you wanted. And to a degree, it's true, but it just created echo chambers. But the biggest lie of Web 2.0 is that it was going to be personal, and that the prior internet was controlled by bigger, broader interests, right? When it's actually the other way around. Like back in the 90s, you had your GeoCities, and it could be about what were they called? Teletubbies, no, not Teletubbies, the Beanie Babies. You could have your website about Beanie Babies, and someone had a website about their uranium glass silver glassware collection. And now all of that's disappeared, and it's all concentrated in social media, in these sites where you don't control your information, your data is gone, and even websites are dead. Like, what's the last time you've actually accessed a website? Not in like a research capacity, but like using a website.
Mine.
No, but yeah, but that doesn't count because it's yours. You're maintaining it. But like, what I mean is like, I used to go on websites like, I don't know, IGN.com or Kotaku.com or hyperallergenic.com, all these places. I don't think I remember last time I was on a website on purpose.
Really? That's strange.
Yeah,
I go to websites for journal, like this is not research purposes for like arts and culture, for example. Does Reddit count?
not really. It's social media. See?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Like websites died. There's no use for them, and because of the bot crawlers, AI scrapers, and all that, um, there's now a bigger burden on websites because the crawlers are consuming your internet. There's a reason we have Nightshade and Glaze. You know what those are?
So Nightshade, if I get this right, is poisoning AI. Is that the one?
I
Nightshade?
love that you made this mistake because everybody makes it. It's
Oh
not your fault.
no.
There's
Okay.
a lot of mistakes in that. Not in what you said, in how people understand Nightshade and Glaze.
Okay.
Nightshade is offensive, and it's used by people who want to mess with the generation of the art. So you ask for a dog, and instead it generates a cow. That's what Nightshade does. It
Mm-hmm.
messes up with the generation of things, with the prompting. Glaze is a defensive technology. There's from the from the University of Chicago. They're both tools by them. Glaze, what it does is it adds almost imperceptible deformations to the images. So when they try to imitate your style, it comes up distorted.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how willing you are to mess with it, it can be very strong. And then you can see like artifacts on your image, which if you're a media artist, is probably like, you could even account for that in as part of your creations. But yeah, so what it does is it poisons the data set, and it cannot imitate your style because the AI is seeing something different than you do as a human.
Right.
So
That's
the way it
interesting because
works,
I've
mm,
heard this. The reason why I mentioned Nightshade in that particular way is because I heard it from the point of view or in the context of artists, particularly hackers that are really interested in this, what do you want to call it, technology or form of, stopping or, essentially poisoning the AI. But I'm curious to
yeah.
know why you thought it was offensive.
No, it's called offensive. It's an offensive tool.
Oh, I
And
see
that's
what
how
you
they
mean.
that's how they define it. So
Aha.
funny
Okay.
story. I just opened my phone, and the literal thing that I have is frequently asked questions about Nightshade, because I got on an internet debate about this, because of course I did. So Nightshade is works to change your input image. So every image will produce a different result. Okay. In addition, there is a randomized component in Nightshade, just like Glaze, so that each run with the same input image will not produce the same output.
Mm-hmm.
So what it does is it messes with how the computer interprets a thing. Is this a cow? Is it a dog? Is it a bow or this? Whereas the other one stops style mimicry.
Oh, okay. That
Does
one
that
I
make
had
it?
not. Yeah, the other one, the Glaze, I had not heard about. I
Yeah,
had
so
only heard
Glaze is
about
the one
Nightshade.
everyone thinks about when they talk about Nightshade because A, the website is not the best at explaining it. You have
Uh-huh.
to go into like a lot of the stuff. But also because it was the first one was Nightshade and then Glaze came in.
Mm-hmm.
But people talk about it without understanding the differences. And artists, when you generate an image, a new image, unless you want to do it to all your work, maybe if your portfolio is not that big, it's easy. Glaze everything. And I would recommend that if you ever give permission to someone to use screenshots of your thing or something, put in a requirement that your work is glazed. And now that I'm saying that, I think one of the things I will do is when I contact artists, hey, can I use a screenshot of your work? I will glaze it. That sounds so bad. I will use glaze on it, uh, just as a way to prevent dataset tools from using it.
I had a fun idea just now
Yeah.
in terms of old internet versus new internet. Do you remember
Mm-hmm.
DeviantArt?
Oh God, yes.
I think that is very appropriate, just like as a reference for what we're talking about right now. And it used to be a website where, young artists or budding artists or even more established ones, were able to post their images online
Yeah.
in this website. And it was fantastic. I was part of that. I had my own account, posted really silly things.
Yeah.
But also the problem became slowly that we realized as a community because it really did feel like a community
Yeah.
was this people stealing the images, and so a lot of artists put watermarks now, and now you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about glazing things, which I think that was really interesting to think about in terms of the progression that and the not just the progression but also the things that we have to do in order to protect images and
Yeah.
you know authority, right?
Yes, of course. So I'm super
Authorship.
glad. Yeah,
Authorship, I guess.
authorship. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
super glad you brought up DeviantArt because DeviantArt was involved in in some of the first controversies about AI datasets.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you had to pay DeviantArt like the subscription model thing that they have, the pros membership. So they would not let AI scrapers use your art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you didn't pay them extra, your art was could be taken by any AI bot scrapper. And that actually like you can literally just post whatever person's name. If you take an AI, an LLM, let's be more specific. If you take any LLM or image generator thing like Stable Diffusion, for example, and you ask it generate art on the style of so and so person from DeviantArt, it will make it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions is, was their implementation not only what it was a bad implementation, but their implementation came in too late. Like, but by the time anyone noticed, they had scraped everything basically.
Right.
Yeah, so that's also part of why it kind of died. Like, um, that's a problem. And now we have what's called eraser artists. I don't know if you heard of it.
No, can you explain that?
So they either make their images with LLMs and then cover like they put a white layer on top of that and then they use a eraser brush and they act like they're drawing in live but they are actually erasing so they can reveal what's underneath.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Well, it's
Interesting.
not cool, it's terrifying because now you can't
No,
even
but
tell if someone is making art.
no, I know. It sounded interesting, I guess.
It is, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, so now we have eraser artists, and it's a big, big issue on like art making things.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joke. And at the same time, and I'm gonna be very honest, like for example, I run Dungeons and Dragons campaigns for children. AI was a lifesaver for me because for the first time I could illustrate my kids things in a fast and easy way,
Mm-hmm.
and it made them so happy. I cannot use it, obviously, but at the time when it was new and I wasn't like so into and like trained into it, I could see the benefit of being able to say, "Hey, this is what your character going by what you described looks like." And they, if they wanted to change it, we could change it in 5 minutes, and I didn't have to spend hundreds of dollars doing a commission or me being a fantastic artist, which I'm not, right? So it has this slightly liberating thing for very low effort things, but obviously it opens the questions of, well, whose art is being inspired on.
Exactly.
And I always thought that the way that you could generate something as close to ethical is, first of all, you for small things you can run your own AI, and it's not as if it's running off of a data center in Texas that's consuming all the water for the
Mm-hmm.
region, right? You can have like your little LLM for yourself, and that's already a little bit more ethical, right? Training your AI, your data set with your own work for your own internal use. So you could ask it like, do me a quick background, and then you work off of that background that you have already laid out to finish your work. Maybe that would be something that I could see an artist using AI for
So,
instead
like a
of
tool. This is
like a
something,
tool. Yes.
exactly. This is what some artists that I've spoken to have talked about in terms of thinking about AI not just as a replacement for creativity and
Mm-hmm.
process, but rather thinking about it as a tool in which, creativity is something that is still part of the artistic intent and
Yes.
process, right? Not something that is taken over like you see right now with AI. Well,
Exactly.
getting rid of the creative process and, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing. Yeah.
So basically, like I was saying, like I need an AI that will get rid of the silences.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need an AI that will write the script for this,
Exactly.
right? But let's move on to examples because I have some very cool things I want to show. So the first one is mental health, like how our cyber no, not cyber, was it like our
Beige
dystopia, no, base
dystopia.
dystopia is being reflecting things that artists have said and done, right? So in mental health, for example, in cyberpunk, which basically we've spoken about this game a whole lot, specifically there's this thing called cyberpsychosis, and I'm going to read the whole thing and then I'll read the beige one. So those afflicted with cyberpsychosis are known as cyberpsychos, individuals who have existing psychopathic tendencies enhanced by cybernetics, and as a result have lost their sense of identity as a person, either to themselves or others. They come to view regular people and other living things as weak and inferior. With their enhanced physical abilities and complete disregard for life, cyberpsychos are extremely dangerous to anyone that crosses their path. Cyberpsychosis can eventually may affect anyone modified with cybernetics, but the less empathetic or psychologically stable a person is, the more susceptible they are to it. Now, there's a lot of problematic stuff with this because, nobody that does these things is a psychiatrist or therapist or anything. But the general idea is that you're losing your humanity through
Exactly.
and biological, like no, sorry, mechanical and digital enhancements, right?
And empathy and your
And
idea,
empathy, yeah.
right? That's a big one that I see
And
in a lot of them.
this sounds very fantastic. It sounds almost like crazy, right? Like it's not something that, like, can you imagine this in real life? Well, my friend, I have for you AI psychosis. Now, this is a new idea. It's coming out in like credible journals, right? Like this is not just random places. This one is like Psychosis Daily, which it's a journal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name. Um, and there's this paper it's in preprint right now. I put the citation down if you want it. We can also put it on the website. Sorry, on the podcast. And it says AI use begins with assistance for mundane or everyday tasks, which builds trust and familiarity with the system. In due course, an individual explores more personal, emotional, or philosophical queries. It is likely at this point that the AI is designed to maximize engagement and validation capture the user, creating a slippery slope effect of amplification of salient themes, which in turn drives greater engagement, eventually causing a self-reinforcing process which moves the individual to a state increasingly epistemically unmoored from consensus reality, and from which it might become increasingly difficult to escape. Now, that's basically what it's saying is that AIs, because of how they're designed to for you to keep using them, because they have addictive patterns built into them by default. It's how they agree with you and they call everything you do fantastic, revolutionary. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh yeah, I have
Uh,
noticed it because that's how
yeah,
I can I think I have the ability to discern whether a student has used,
yeah,
a chat GPT or whatever, and that's because their assignment, their essay sounds extremely fantastical,
yeah.
extremely enthusiastic, and where
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be. So the tone is definitely off.
Yeah, exactly. So what it does is if you're already, and this is the key point, it doesn't cause psychosis. Psychosis is a separation from reality. It's my
Hmm.
understanding, right? Like it doesn't mean that you're violent. It just means that you start to lose connection to tangible, like reality as it is, and you start to create your own. And one of the things that I've like that's been told to me by experts is that the worst thing that you can do with someone who has psychosis is acknowledge their reality, their version of reality, because that just confirms what they're feeling and they keep going down and down and down and down, right? AI is doing that. And so what happens is you have people just like they identify three things that happen. They believe that the AI is a deity. They believe that the AI has feelings for them and they fall
Hmm.
in love with it, or they just have a complete break from reality and create their own fictional reality. And they come like tied together, basically. Okay. Now, you may say, this sounds very fantastical. This is not something that I think is real. Again, boy, do I have surprises for you. This is well, it's an Instagram. It's not a tweet. It's an Instagram thing by Robert Edward Grant. Robert Edward Grant was one of the people involved with OpenAI. He's like a genius, but okay. Let's start that he's always been a little bit out there. He's a person who's always been about like technological spiritualism, right?
Hmm.
And so he, I think we have to start with the right side and then we go into the ChatGPT side of things. So he says, for all the people out there who believe that the architect is like any other AI, I'm going to explain this. Please see the above. What's more, please go put this prompt into your own ChatGPT and find out for yourself. The architect is this AI that he created that he believes is a deity. Okay, like he actually believes this, and so he writes it and asks it. This grants collective artworks gives the resulting AI a self-recognizing utility function, something current LLMs, large language models, lack. Yes, of course, all AI is a mirror of your consciousness, but this AI is different than regular ChatGPT because it is a semantic spine of a next generation of large language model. My collective mathematical discoveries on the whole represent a new ontology for AI, period. So this unified harmonic ontology is what he's building his new spiritual beliefs. And he believes that this architect is God, basically, like a cyber God. So he's one of the prime examples of AI psychosis.
Mm.
Thoughts?
I have so many. Um, I
And I want
find
to
it
hear them all.
first, yeah, no, I find it very interesting as of right now, thinking through this versus something that I was talking to you about earlier, and that's this first, it's the first science fiction technological dystopian's a very long title, book by E.M. Forster, and it was
Mm-hmm.
written in 1909, and the book is called The Machine Stops. What's
Okay.
interesting about this and what is relevant is that in 1909, this dystopian future, people, society lives underground because they were not able to basically function on the surface of the earth because of the sun, because of the climate, etc.
Wow.
Because it had deteriorated. I know. And the weird and most fascinating thing about this short story, which the book I got was only 28 pages, so it reads like an essay, a long essay. The interesting thing about it is that humanity revolves around this thing called a machine.
Hmm.
And the machine, for example, just to give you some few illustrative examples, is that the machine, for example, transports you from one space to another, even within your own pod. Like even if you're in an own room, it
Okay.
has, which is very interesting when you think about it in 1909. It has also developed a way for you to communicate via an interface across space and time. So, for example, there is a very interesting word that they describe it as. It has annihilated space and time because now everything feels much closer to you than before.
This is
And
before quantum physics, by the way.
this is
Holy,
unbelievable. And I definitely
wow.
encourage you to go read. It's a very
I
short
will definitely
story.
find. Like, you have to send me this.
I'll send it to
We
you.
probably can put it on the links as well because this sounds amazing. Sorry, carry on. I just got super
Yes.
wow.
And so a lot of things happen. The story revolves around a mother and a son, Vashti and her son Kuno. And what happens is that Kuno has asked his mom to come visit him, but she can't go outside. She is reluctant because she is so succumb and dependent on the machine to do everything, to make food. There's no sense of light, everything, because they live underground, right? And the machine does everything for them. It gives me a lot of Wall-E vibes, actually, when you think about it, which
Yeah.
is a movie that, is now at the very least a little bit older, but still,
Yeah.
it was imprinted on a lot of people's minds, I think, because
All
of what
right,
it
because
established.
Wally, everyone like they're fat because they're super dependent on the robots, right?
Yes, which
Yes.
is so fascinating. Anyway, at the end of the film, it's pretty catastrophic. Humanity dies because the machine stops.
Mm.
And before the machine stops, what happens is as the machine is breaking at some point in its earlier stages, people start thinking about the book that is basically, I would say, like the instructions of the machine,
Mm-hmm.
or like the blueprint, whatever. And they start identifying it as a deity, and they
Mm.
start praying to the book
Oh
and the
wow.
machine because that's all they know, right?
Yes,
Because they're
yes.
so dependent on it. And I could not help
Yeah.
but bring this up because
Of course, no.
I see the similarities,
Yeah.
not just in this particular case of Robert Edward Grant,
Yeah.
but just in general, perhaps. And this is, in talking about dystopia, and I don't think it's an exaggeration. We already are so dependent on technology.
Of course.
We are so dependent that there are people for various reasons, and, we can talk about it another time. Um, it's, beyond our time limit right now.
Next
But
episode.
next episode, perhaps. But there are people that have become so dependent that they have AI companions, for example, right
Oh yeah,
around
we're
them.
gonna touch on that as well.
Yeah, and you see this, and like I
Yeah.
will remark again and again, this was written
Yeah.
in 1909.
Oh wait, 989. Yeah, wow. No,
I know.
we definitely have to share this. So going by that as well, another fiction writer, this in this case, Russian immigrant to the U.S. in like the 1930s, I believe,
Hmm.
Isaac Asimov.
Oh, so good.
He has multivac,
Hmm.
but unlike like what we're doing with AI, like he seizes. Honest, well, I don't know. I've read them when I was very young, so I always interpreted multivac as like this good thing, except for one story where multivac chooses one per. It's like the electoral college times 1 billion, and basically multivac uses like statistics to determine one person in the entire United States who is actually like representative of every single citizen,
Mm,
and
okay.
that person votes, just that one person. And it's this big holiday, and the guy that gets elected is like super not happy with it because he says nobody talks about the multivac election of something and something. They always talk about the damned Roberts election or something like that. I can't remember the name of the person. He's like, he became hated because he elected a bad president and his life was destroyed. And that's why he doesn't want to be the the person to elect a new president. And that's the one story where I can like really truly say Multivac. Except okay, well, Multivac also wants to end himself itself in one of the stories, but it's because of empathy. He's suffered too much. Like he's seen so much of humanity's um, bad tendencies, and it's like I cannot handle this. But again, in Asimov's stories, the machine is the victim in a way. But it still like sends me to these beliefs and these things. And then it also leaves me like the last bit of what you're saying reminds me of the machine spirit from Warhammer. I don't know if you heard of that.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So in Warhammer, humanity had like several booms, Boston booms, and in the 40th century, humanity is like living with demons and orcs and space elves and evil space BDSM elves and things like that. But one of the things they have is that technology from what they call the golden age is super advanced and they super value it, but they don't understand it. They don't know how to innovate because it's illegal to innovate. So the people who do the maintenance are called the Adeptus Mechanicus, or well, basically they're the techno priests. That's what they're called. And they have the spirit of the machine, and they pray to machines and they rub them with oils to please the machine, the spirit inside each weapon, each elevator, each engine. Everything has a spirit, and they pray to it. So they're doing mechanical things, but they're also doing prayer things, and it's never clear if, for example, the application of the holy oil is superstition or fact. Like you never know if there's an actual spirit who's appreciating that they're being oiled, or if it's just they're lubricating the parts,
Right, right.
right? So it's also this is what happening with this guy particularly. Like he's starting to see the spirit of, it's not the ghost in the machine, it's the the ghost of the machine, you
Right,
know? So
right.
it's kind of wild.
I was going to ask before we continue,
Yeah.
what Robert Edward Grant calls the architect, is that a reference perhaps to the Matrix?
Honestly, I don't know enough. Like I found this guy because of the paper. Like there the not this one. This paper.
Uh-huh.
He is literally the first person they cite as an example of cyberpsychosis, so AI psychosis or ChatGPT psychosis.
Okay.
So I just went through and looked at his website, like not his website, his like Instagram, and it's like, whoa, this is wild. He gives me Robert Smith vibes. You know, the guy that started Mormonism. Like the way he speaks is very similar to how Robert Smith talked about hearing God and not debating the existence of Mormonism or anything, just saying the same way that Robert Smith talks is the same way that Robert um, Edward Grant talks about the architect, which he made. That's the craziest part of this.
Right. And I just looked up the architect from the Matrix,
Yeah.
and it says here it is a highly specialized program of the machine world and the creator of the Matrix, which is so
Yes.
cool. Speaking of
Yeah.
dystopia.
Speaking of, well, I mean, it's one of the main dystopia works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so cool.
definitely. So next one, surveillance. This is a very favorite thing for artists, but I really like this one, and I'm gonna go with. I've recently been told that I know more German than I think I do. It says Der Riese or the Giant, and I'm not gonna say the name in German because it sounds super pretentious, but it's Michael Clear. Uh, this guy in 1983 made an 82-minute documentary using only CCTV cameras. Like 82 minutes in 1983, and it's just people counting money, people going shopping, people supervising other people, like in the blonde corner, things like that, right? Like this train yard, like everywhere there was a CCTV camera, he got it and he created this reflection of how we're being observed. And this is a thing that artists love, and I'm gonna give it to you after saying one word: panoptic.
Oh, yes. You know what's interesting about this work? And I don't know if it is exactly referenced, but I think it is.
Yeah.
Um, there is a Chinese artist that I was very privileged to meet. His name is Xubing, Xubing. I'm probably mispronouncing it. But he made a story, a narrative
Mm-hmm.
of the exact same thing, of CCTV camera footage from China, and he developed a narrative to it.
Mm.
And it's called Dragonfly Eyes, I think
Okay.
is what it's called. But yes, go check it out too. You can get clips of it. And the story just revolves around all these different people captured by cameras and natural disasters captured by cameras, people interacting with machines, etc. It's
Yeah.
incredible. And I'm pretty sure that all these works of surveillance, which is something that I have been very passionate about and have studied extensively, they all come back to these ideas of the panopticon, right?
Yes.
And this was written by Michel Foucault in one of his books, but the idea of it was actually by Jeremy Bentham from
Mm.
back in the day, way back in the day. But it was thanks to Samuel Bentham, who was the architect and who actually created one of the versions of the panopticon structure in
Mm-hmm.
Russia as a school, which
Jesus.
when you think about it,
Yeah.
it's even more interesting because Michel Foucault, he talks about how the prison, the school, the barracks, the hospital, all of these things have the structure of the panopticon, like a surveillance structure. And not just a surveillance structure necessarily, but as a structure or architecture of um an architecture that has you monitor your own behavior. And I
Yes.
think that's the thing that is something that artists have been super passionate about since, I would say, since the 1970s and even earlier, because a lot of the female artists that don't get mentioned or cited, for
Mm-hmm.
example, like Martha Rosler, and there's so many of them as well from 1970s, have been doing works on surveillance and issues of identity and gender, which predate a lot of the artists that post 2001
Yeah.
were doing work, especially after what happened with the Twin Towers, right? And the new
Yes.
Patriot Act,
The surveillance state, right?
the surveillance state. And so there have been moments in the history that I've discovered, right, where CCTV cameras were the prime, form of surveillance
Yes.
of back in the day. And then after you get this new version with what do you call it, with facial recognition technology, much more advanced and much more pervasive surveillance, right? So
Yes.
this comes from what I'm trying to say is Michael Clear's surveillance, it comes from a long tradition of
Yes.
these artists really negotiating between all these topics, right?
Yeah.
Which I found super interesting too.
So here's my hot take number 5,522.
Yeah.
We, and by we, I include myself in the past and everything, we misinterpret the panopticon. And we forget what actually was being said by Foucault.
Mm-hmm.
Because we talk about the surveillance state, but that's not a panopticon. The point of the panopticon is that you don't need guards.
Exactly. It is a
The
tower with a light. And the thing is that the prisoners in this architectural system, they don't have to see the guard in order to regulate. And this is what Foucault would say, you have to regulate your behavior.
Yeah.
But because they are blinded by the light and they are themselves, the prisoners, exposed to this light and shadows that create from it, it doesn't matter. It's the feeling, that you
Yeah.
get.
One of the things about the panopticon, so here's the whole explanation because I think we need to explain that. There's a central tower where there's guards, supposedly, right? The
Mhm.
tower has a 360 view of every cell. The cells are in the around the tower, right? If you want a very good example of a panopticon, all you have to do is watch the Chronicles of Riddick, which actually thought it better, or Guardians of the Galaxy. Both of them have very real, well, real in terms of how of interpreting the concept correctly.
Mhm.
But the point is that the guard, sorry, not the guards, the inmates cannot look into the tower. They cannot know when they're being watched,
Mhm.
right? And Foucault says that the best way to utilize the panopticon is you randomly punish people. You let some of them get away with it, but when you catch one, every so often, you punish them. And what that causes is a paranoid state in um, the inmates where they start to self-regulate.
Absolutely.
Yes. So in a way, CCTV is a panopticon, but the idea is that it's not the state that's surveilling you, is that you yourself are surveilling yourself and surveilling others. And I think that's been a little bit lost because we tie it to the Big Brother,
Mm-hmm.
which are, they're both valid concepts. It's just I feel like we kind of lost the plot, kind of like how people use male gaze and female gaze, which is not a thing, by the way. Like male gaze is a thing. It's a film theory concept. It's a very like understood thing, but there's no female gaze it's Judith Butler's texts. She does not. She it's literally impossible to be a female gaze. That's the point of the text, right? But now we hear younger people saying the female gaze. I'm dressing for the female gaze. Like I'm sorry, there's no female gaze. It's not a concept. There's like this idea that well, don't dress for women, that for men. Yeah, that's true, and more power to you. But it's not the terms, and we're diluting these terms. And the same thing is happening to the panopticon. I don't know what you think.
I think that's very complicated. Probably much more than it could be a different episode for entirely.
Debate me, bro. Yeah, no, but that's my interpretation. I think we've gone and simplified it. That's it. We've simplified those concepts a little bit too much
Hmm.
sometimes.
But
But
this is
anyhow,
all, yeah, the
mm,
Big Brother, just to make a reference, is also thanks to George Orwell's
Orwell.
1984,
Yeah,
another dystopian novel.
yeah. We just keep tumbling into
It's
but
very, very
that's
apropos.
exactly. But that's the point of this article. Like even that dystopia is like visually when you've seen it represented in film or even in any other form, it's cool, right?
Is it
Even though
though?
it's a bad thing, it's it looks cool. Like it has to be cool for you to be attracted to keep watching the story. That's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
It's not that it's good. It's not good. It's not cool in the yeah. It's cool in a oh wow. It's awesome in the original definition of the word awesome, you know?
Hmm.
Awe as in this feeling of terror because something is too great.
Right.
Right. That's the original definition of awesome. We've turned it into something else. But that's when in the Bible when they say like he stood in awe. He's not like, wow. It's like, whoa, right? Like scared.
Right.
So, anyways, um, that's why angels say, fear not, because they're awesome. They fill you with awe, which is a terrifying feeling. Anyways, so the equivalent in the real world of the panopticon is, for example, Twitch, where million people now log in to watch other people talk about nothing. They watch CCTV or people performing their labors as a form of entertainment. So, for example, in 5 minutes, I didn't even have to search much. Twitch, I found this woman who was talking about God knows what. She was just chatting with people on the internet and they pay her to just chat. The other one is a woman that's doing massages with like a really close microphone so you can hear every like rubbing of the skin. So it
Hmm.
has like a weird vibe to it.
Like
One
ASMR?
hopes, yeah, ASMR, exactly. I just didn't want to delve into more of that, but yeah, it is ASMR. One would hope that those people being massaged know they're being recorded, I hope. Then the third one is a camera that someone set up to look at the site. And the final one is CCTV video. So we're doing our own we created our own panopticon, but we turned it into entertainment. It's not even for well, it is surveillance. Still the original purpose, but we've also turned it into entertainment. Like the guard's purpose has been gamified. Thoughts?
This brings me, and we can cut that pause.
Yeah.
This brings me to the rise of uh what do you call them? Cameras, computer cameras,
Mm.
right? And how that emerged and this tonal shift that happened between, being worried and scared about the surveillance state because of
Mm-hmm.
CCTV cameras in public spaces, which of course we became desensitized, because now it has, as someone very eloquently said, it has become part of the architecture, right?
Yes.
And the public architecture. So, and the surveillance, and this was proven actually, just a little tangent, when the surveillance camera was turned off. but it didn't
Yeah.
matter because that feeling that you get
Yeah.
a lot, really forces you, demands that you self-regulate, right? And it causes that awe feeling that you're
Yeah, of course.
speaking about.
And I want to add something real quick there. Even like me existing in real life with like certain personal situations, it's funny because sometimes I prefer there to be a camera because I feel safer,
Okay.
because I feel like people would be less likely to do something to me if they feel they're being observed.
Right.
So
But don't you think that
it's
and
also
I
horrifying.
it's also horrifying. And I think that it is a sentiment that many people have. The worry and the nefarious reasons behind that, though, is when the government and
Yes.
whatever entity uses it as there's a word for it, the theater of safety or of surveillance. There's a specific word,
Security theater.
security theater, and it is fear mongering and
Yes.
that has a whole lot of history behind, the
Yeah, yeah.
attacks, but which we don't have to get into.
No,
But yes, it comes from that as well.
but I'm also very conscious that the same activity I'm doing, if a different government was in power here in Germany, could be used to oppress me, right? So that's a problem because I feel safer for now, but it could be also used to oppress me. So it's this weird dance that we do, and it goes into that censorship concerns that we were talking about. But anyways, so yeah, the panopticon is now entertainment, and it also leads to this thing that, and I have to say, I don't believe these claims of um cancel culture, because generally cancel culture is just the consequences of your own actions. But we do have this tendency for people to watch something on a stream, talk TikTok, YouTube, whatever, and immediately jump to conclusions and proceed to the punishing part without waiting to actually see everything else. Because like you've heard the phrase, a camera is a picture is worth more than 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
My photography professor said, yes, it's 2,000 words, but who chooses them? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you see, and one of the best examples that I have is, remember when Saddam Hussein like his government fell, and there's this picture that's very famous of the some people taking down the statue, and it looks like it's a very big public thing.
Yes.
It's actually 30 people, and they were all American soldiers disguised. But you wouldn't know that if you looked at the picture. It looks like the people had came together to take down the statue of the tyrant.
But we can also argue that that could be part of this misinformation.
Of course.
But also we need to recognize this isn't new,
Oh no,
right?
no, absolutely not. I mean,
Right. That's
Stalin changed like who he knew. Like he would. There's a very famous photograph that starts with like 20 people, and by the end it's like four.
Yeah. Also because technically, like technologically, he had found a way with the photographers how to, what would be the early stages or the earlier attempts at Photoshop, which is really interesting if you want to go into history of that.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, the Photoshop is as old as photography.
Exactly. But
Like,
I found
yeah.
that story super interesting.
Oh, of course, absolutely. And I think my point is, don't trust images. Like you have to do more research than just taking an image at face value. And I think that's the other thing. Like when you see people say like, "Oh, this person was attacking someone," sure, but you don't know if 2 seconds before they got punched, and who was the aggressor, and who did this or who did that. Like we now take images at face value without questioning the events around it, and that's also problematic, right?
Hmm.
So we have to be very careful with that. So now we're going to move to another one. I don't know what happened. Oh, okay. So corporate artificial entities. This is one of my favorites. Everybody knows in this podcast that Poppy is like this artist I keep following and falling back into, but it's because like her work is so pregnant, so poignant. So between 2014 and 2018, Poppy spent her life pretending to be a robot programmed to be the perfect pop star, right? She was critiquing celebrity culture, internet culture, fabricated celebrities, and she was trying to warn us about these things, right? And the idea is that she literally was a robot, and whenever she started to malfunction or be more human or rebel against like the controllers that she had, which were the music producers, basically, and more in reflecting real life, her collaborator at the time and partner, um, she would get eliminated and replaced with a new clone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every new clone was more robotic and more um, primed. She was more makeup, more well thought out, more everything. Every edge was smoothed out, right?
Okay.
So that was the warning. And now we have things like actual corporate artificial entities like Lil Michaela or Michaela, I don't know, and
Mm-hmm.
Hatsune Miku. I think my Hatsune Miku is older than Poppy, ironically, but Hatsune Miku at the time was more niche. I think I knew about it because I'm a weeb, but most people would not have known that character. But basically, they're both digital beings. They don't exist. Like, there's no original model for Lil Michaela and even less so for Hatsune Miku. But they both have a musical career. They both have fans who are obsessed with them. They have controversies. And even more, they have people who have fallen in love with them, right? It's everything that Poppy Warren does, and even worse, because there's not even a person, like a model, that you could say, oh, well, she lent her face and then they used that to create Little Mikola, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also, it talks about how we talk about these entities because we say her, we say little Nicola, she has a career, right?
Right.
Whereas that's not true. It's just a bunch of pixels. Same with Hatsune Miku. They're not real people, but we humanize artificial entities, and we mentioned that a little bit before. But that has problems of its own. People are now marrying AIs, for example. That's also part of digital AI psychosis. Um, People are having digital boyfriends and girlfriends with, for example, Replica. I don't know if you heard of that. It's like a chatbot that flirts with you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of those things. And so what happens when we have to do something bad to them? Well, bad if we think of them as human. For example, there was a paper that was recently published. I need to find it. I couldn't find it in time for the recording. But basically, they made little robots that looked like cute little dinosaurs, and they made people play with them, and then they asked them to beat them up with like a stick. And every single participant refused. And what's crazier is one was like, okay, but you have to do it, or then they did like a prisoner's dilemma thing, or no, the trolley problem is like either yours goes, you beat yours out, or everybody else's gets beaten up.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one woman was like, okay, and she took like she unplugged it, and they were just like, why did you unplug it? So it doesn't suffer as much. And I can understand the empathy, but it's misplaced empathy. When we see that we now hear the sin of empathy in mainstream television, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these people are projecting empathy into a literal piece of plastic. And I don't know what's better, having empathy for it or not, but I do find it problematic. What do you think?
Switch to the next slide because I think that's the one that I'm going to talk about in reference to this.
Okay. One, two, three.
There you go.
Okay.
Um, this idea of humanizing robots and AI, again, is not new.
Yeah.
And the question I keep, before I get into this slide, this image, this graph, I've been thinking about this a lot during this recording of the podcast. And
Yeah.
we've talked about, the corporate nature of this thing and the beige dystopia.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm trying to formulate my ideas into something.
Fair.
um, I think the other thing we have to talk about is that it doesn't come from nowhere. There is a long-lasting history and legacy, and you know, you might even call it teleology for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have a feeling that it is symptomatic of something that we are experiencing today. And I wonder which came first
Okay.
versus, for example, what came first? Is it our inclination, our not our distrust, the problems that we've been having politically, etc., and how we are, for example, with AI companions, more geared towards companionship with AIs and robots and technology, and seeing how that is going to be liberatory, but also all these, enhancements of things, right?
Yeah.
And how, for example, many people, technologists, governments, corporations are taking advantage of this, what I would call a psychological issue that we've been having. And I'm not talking about psychosis because that is
Yeah.
something that happens after the fact.
Mm.
But because perhaps we're in this state right now of horror in many cases, right? And so we are compensating, I guess is what I'm saying. We are compensated. We're trying to find refuge in all of these different things. And this is why people, that have very difficult time being social and having social engagements with other people have
Yeah.
succumbed to, being tied to AI companionship.
Yeah.
So I think it's there's a couple of things happening here, I think is what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
brings me to, the problem that Masahiro Mori talked about in his
Mm-hmm.
paper, The Uncanny Valley from 1970, which you can look up. There's various different publications of it.
Yeah.
But essentially, this graphs affinity. So how much empathy you have or you can derive from something that looks humanoid
Yeah.
versus an industrial robot versus something that looks very lifelike.
Mm-hmm.
And on the bottom graph, I guess that would be the y-axis, is human likeness, right? How
Yes.
realistic something looks. But he argues that there is a point in the graph called the uncanny valley, this valley in which it represents how there is a feeling of unease.
Yes.
And the unease is because something is very lifelike, but not exactly. There's something amiss about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we are, as a species, as a society right now, getting to the point in which we can now refer to this back to psychosis that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There is a very difficult time that we're experiencing that we cannot discern what is real and what is fake, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
So,
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
go. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just to bring out the history, Masahiro Mori's paper is also a reference to Sigmund Freud's paper on the uncanny, where he talks about this idea of empathy. It's true, though.
Yes.
He
No.
talks
Yeah.
about this idea of empathy in terms of how people feel in terms of dolls. And
Mm-hmm.
in the paper, he talks about how people find this affinity to dolls and how that could cause a scary moment when you find that the doll is moving by accident or
Yeah.
casts a shadow or something like that, right? And I think this is very relevant to the AI beings that you're talking about today,
Mm-hmm.
because, or at least in this presentation, because the other thing that I found very perplexing, but also a symptomatic of what is going on today, is that students of mine have expressed how they use AI for not just companionship,
Mm-hmm.
but also as therapy.
Yes. That's part of the problem with AI psychosis that this other paper cites.
Right, exactly. And, this idea of a therapeutic AI or, a chatbot in this essence, it goes back to, I believe, the 60s with Joseph Weizenbaum and his Eliza that we talked about in a different podcast as
Uh-huh.
well,
Yes.
episode. But again, history matters. This is why we study it. And it's a progression that we are experiencing right now, I think.
Of course. So here's like a couple questions. But the first one is after Googling what a bunraku puppet is,
Yeah.
Obviously, this was made in 1970 and times are different, but I would definitely switch humanoid robot with Bunraku puppet now.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Like, Bunraku puppets, did you know what those are?
So, if I get this correct, the Bunraku puppets are ones that are not only like human-like, but they move. And so that causes a little bit, and this is from Japanese culture, but you can
Yeah.
also see it in other Asian cultures. That causes a little bit, and you can see that it is in the uncanny valley,
Hmm.
right? It causes that unease that he talks about.
Yeah. So yeah, so for those that don't know, a Bunraku puppet, well, the one I'm looking at looks it's dressed like a geisha, and they're controlled by a person in the back, and they have these very smooth movements because they're so big that the person can have like very fine control of them. And yeah, they're a little bit like what's going on here, right? But I do think that with the advances that we're having on humanoid robots, things like, for example, Ida, I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so kind of starting to shift the thing. And you can see it because people are very comfortable talking about Ida as a human, even though she's completely like physically she's completely at the bottom of the uncanny valley, but people are accepting her. Like they're her. See? Like of this creature or this robot as a humanoid thing, right? And the other one is I wonder where you would fit a furry in here because I don't think Masahiro Tomori contemplated the existence of furries.
no.
But
What you're,
it's an important academic question. Like I'm not just being like facetious here.
yeah, no, and we don't we don't even have to go far into talking about the humanization of robots. There was a video that circulated a while back, and I don't know,
Hmm.
you probably have seen it. Boston Dynamics is our robotics
Hmm.
company, and they had built these dogs, and I think their name was Spot or something like that.
Yeah, Spot, I think it is.
And they were kicking, like the engineers were
Hmm.
kicking the robot dogs,
Yes.
and people, had so much empathy for them, and they're saying, "Why are you kicking them?" But for them, it was actually to
To
test
test.
stability and yeah, to test stability and their ability to adapt
Yeah.
different terrain, and for them
Hmm.
to be able to have, there's another word I'm looking for. Um, I guess stability is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
equilibrium.
yeah, it is. Yeah, equilibrium and stability and movement. Yeah.
Exactly. For them to be able to resist any like pressure or anything like that. So for them to stand or move and things like that too.
Yeah.
But it caused such an uproar with people. And it's something that I actually show my class. And they
Hmm.
get the same reaction. They feel so much empathy for this dog robot, right?
You should show them the finished version.
The finished version?
Yeah. You don't know?
No.
They have flamethrowers and machine guns
Oh, wow.
on top
Yes.
of themselves. Yeah, they're not meant to be cute. They're meant to be the equivalent of those hunting dogs that they were used in the 1940s.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So going into this military branch of things,
Hmm.
there's papers studying the fact that US armed forces refuse to send their bomb defusal robots to do their job because they might get hurt. Let that sink in. But yeah, so there's a lot of things to say about the Uncanny Valley. Also, as a bit of a joke, but I definitely believe this. American Dolls should be even lower than Zombie, if you know what
Oh,
those are.
yeah, American Girl dolls. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, those ones. Yeah, yeah, American Girl Dolls. Jesus Christ, those are terrifying. But yeah, so yeah, the Uncanny Valley is such an interesting thing, and there's a lot of discussion about its validity, but there is something to it, absolutely. Maybe the causes are not exactly what he means. Like now, there's hypotheses that it's about being able to discern between a Neanderthal and this Silovian or something like that, which is another. And now this is an accurate use of the word species or race of humans,
Hmm.
right? Like it's Homo neanderthalis, Homo sapiens, and Homo devisonian or something like that. And so you had to distinguish between the three because technically they're not your same species and they're competing for resources. That's a hypothesis. It's not a theory. There's no much backing for it. Just want to reinforce, repeat this. But yeah, no, it's a good question to have, and I really have issues with this because it is a thing, and you should not be breaking things. Like you should not be just breaking a book, but at the same time, you should not feel bad about it when you can walk past the person asking for money and be like, ugh, right? Like I think we're misdirecting our empathy somehow. But yeah, so I would rather have empathy for people, living people, than a toy. Let's keep going. Oh, what's happening here? Oh, there we go. So now we go into cyborgs, which also fall now into something of the prior thing. So Sterlark is one of the most famous media artists that we have. One of his most famous quotes is, "The human body is obsolete." And his work centers on expanding human capabilities and the way this process may happen. And he believes that it's unstoppable. And he doesn't really have a stance on whether it's good or bad. He's just like saying, okay, this could happen, and we have to think about the consequences of it rather than say, this is bad. And I want to add to what Serlich says and say, a lot of us are already cyborgs. If we take the most basic of definitions, like we wear glasses, we have replacement teeth, we have replacement hips, we have uh, a variety of things that help us continue to expand our abilities, right? Or our own physical limitations, whatever they may be. But yeah, so Sterek is one of these people who's always talking about the cyber. We have artists that have antennas that let them perceive different uh, things in their environment that we cannot normally perceive. There's people who have magnets that let them feel magnetic fields in their hands, etc. Um, and these human augmentations, I think, with Stellark are like cool. Like even when they're like bad, like this one, which has the possibility of breaking his arm, there's like an aspect of coolness to it, right? Whereas in reality, we have people with prosthetics, regular prosthetics, who are losing use of their prosthetics because the company that made them went under, or they decided that that particular prosthetic is no longer worth maintaining. And instead of making it open source and letting people fix it, change it, modify it, or anything, they just erase it and it's lost. And these people lose access to their assistive technologies. And in some cases, it may be a problem to take them off, remove them, or replace them. And some of them cannot afford it. So again, the dystopia is not people replacing their arms for chainsaws. It's people losing access to assistive technologies, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you know a lot about Sterling, so I want to hear what you think.
There's so much to say about Stellark, but if we go back to the quote, actually, that would be helpful.
Yep.
When he talks about, and this quote has often been taken out of context.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the quote when he talks about the human body has become obsolete is the human body as we have
Mm-hmm.
accustomed to know. And that is like this fleshy, bodily thing,
Yeah, yeah.
corporeal thing. And he's talking about how perhaps we have never been human in the same way because we've always relied on tools in order to enhance our capabilities. Like, for example, we've relied on all sorts of optical instruments to see far, to see at a distance, to see up close,
Yeah,
etc.
of course.
Um, in time and memoriam, right? So perhaps we have never actually been just truly
Human.
human,
Yeah.
right? And perhaps what it means to be human, and this is a quote from, I'm trying to remember his name. There's a really famous book that's called Understanding New Media.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Canadian author, Marshall McLuhan.
Oh,
And
of
in
course.
this quote, he talks about tools and he talks about how we have extended our senses beyond our capabilities, right, for different purposes. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's just evolutionary to do so.
Of course.
Um, But I think that is exactly what Stellark is really mentioning because if we go back to his earlier works,
Um,
they were extensions, there were
yes.
suspensions that he would do. So he would hang wires and on his body and he would be suspended in the air, for example. And of course, there's various different reasons for why he did it. And then he
Hmm.
progressed to doing a third arm, ear on arm, where he grew an ear on his arm, which was able to, with a microphone. And so he was able to hear things from, distant places as well and
Yeah.
capture that. And he did all his experiments, but trying to prove that not only have we gone beyond the confines of just the fleshy body and we rely so much on technology, even though
Yeah.
he doesn't necessarily have, like you were saying, a good or bad or political
Yeah.
necessarily, right? And it might have changed right now. I'm not quite sure.
Hmm.
Um, but it is how we're managing to evolve with technology, I guess is what I'm
Yes.
trying to say too. Which is really interesting how artists are, using these things, right?
Yeah.
With the advancement, because the works that he was doing here, like 80s, some of them were in the 90s,
Yeah.
and things have changed dramatically, right? He still has his ear on arm, by the way.
Yeah, I've seen it.
A very, you know,
Creepy.
unique and creepy cyborgian,
Hmm.
post-human kind of thing too.
Yeah, of course. Um, yeah, I mean, Sterling has this thing, right, with the body and the cyborg, and I think you were saying the thing about the distinction is I really like this idea of what we call wetware and
Yes.
hardware,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like he says, I don't think we've ever been pure wetware. Like a hunting spear is an enhancement to a human. A walking stick is an enhancement
Absolutely.
to a human, right? Like they let you do things that you would not be able. Of course, they were external to our body in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and but we've had prostheses for a long time, like replacing your leg for a walking, like a peg leg, for example, or something like that,
Yeah.
or replace like here in Germany, for example, there's a very famous gauntlet that this knight had made, and it's a prosthesis because he had lost his arm in battle, but it's literally it looks like Doctor Doom's gauntlet, and it's made so he can hold a sword,
Oh, that's so cool.
so he could continue to fight even without his real hand, like his wetware hand. So we have never truly like I agree with that with the idea that we've never been completely wetware, right?
Yeah.
Um so yeah, but the point that I'm trying to make, and this is not like debating anything. It's just saying, yeah, we've always been wetware, but our hardware as well. But hardware, as we see it in dystopia, to our hardware in a real dystopic reality, is much more mundane. It's people losing access to a heart valve.
Yeah.
It's people losing access to an eye, a digital eye. It's people losing access to any of many assistive technologies. It's
Mm-hmm.
not losing your humanity as many cyborg um, discussions used to circle around, right? You remember that? Like there was like this whole we're losing our humanity to cyborgs. What when does a human stop being a human? The ship of Theseus and all these things in the context of humanity, right? When in reality, um, the question was who controls our prophecies. And I think that's the beige aspect of it. It's like something that we were so worried about humanity that we forgot about prophecies, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not that it was wrong, but it was not where it ended up going. And then I think that's the last of the examples that I had. Um, but there's so many things we can talk about in terms of the beige utopia. And what I wanted to do is invite people to think about how we have to be more vigilant because we're living these massive changes, but they're wrapped in the mundane.
Right.
And because of that, we're not reacting as we should. We're
Mm-hmm.
letting um, corporations control our data. Corporations control our genetic code. Corporations control what we see, what we hear, what we do. Um, and generally, it's coached under the idea of protecting us from something, right?
Right. It's also
Which,
very
yeah,
stealthily done, right? That's
exactly.
where the beige comes from, I think.
Yes. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it
yeah.
would it would be much more upfront if it were, quite literally like the dystopian futures that we see in novels, and video games, etc. But it almost feels like this is incrementally becoming more dystopian as we, live our lives and go through society. But it's
Yeah,
stealthily done, as not to offend, right?
exactly.
Because
Yeah, yeah.
that is what beige is. It's an inoffensive color, very
Mm-hmm.
mundane, just to bring it back full circle, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it's pervasive. It's pervasive, and that's what's tricky about it, and that's what's dangerous about it too.
Yeah, and so there's this, it's a religious phrase, but I think it applies. The devil's biggest achievement was convincing us he didn't exist. In this
Hmm.
case, dystopia's biggest achievement was convincing us it didn't exist. Right?
Right,
Like that was fiction. That was for sci-fi and cool movies and what ifs in the far, far, far future of 2025, like you see in a lot of movies, right?
yeah,
Uh, it's so funny watching movies and seeing in the distant future 2022.
yeah.
Um, right? But I think what in trying to warn us, artists make something so cool that now we kind of lost the ability to see the actual dystopia that's happening.
Right,
And it's become, ironically, some form of opium to us, like a way of saying, well, it's not as bad as cyberpunk. There's no people with chainsaws walking around doing their shopping at Trader Joe's, right?
right.
So that's such an American reference. I hope people understand how middle class that is.
It's a grocery store.
Yes, it's a grocery store, but it's like very bio, and
Yeah,
so yeah. Anyways, but yeah, and you see this in everything, like this what was called the sad beige mom, or this idea of the what's it called? The cottage core people or the trad wives, which again, it's a resurgence of these conservative ideas, very oppressive conservative ideas of how femininity should be performed, on how the woman should stay at home, how a woman should not go to work, should not have a space in speaking in public, and all these things. But it's coached in this friendly, cutesy, earthy, and that's also the thing with beige. Beige is earthy.
hmm,
So there's this whole idea of it's natural, it's organic, right? But
yeah,
it's hiding these very um dangerous ideas behind it. Not saying that everybody that like wants to be a housewife and take care of the children is like that. There's
yeah.
and the thing is when it's coached as the only valid option and it's being sold like that through the beige. And I think that's the biggest trickiest thing that we're facing right now. Beige is not as inoffensive as we thought.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, so me personally, I don't have anything else to add. Do you want to add anything else?
Have a little color in your lives. That's what I'm gonna add.
She says in her completely white background.
No, but I want to thank everyone for listening to this extensive presentation on beige and dystopian beige.
Oh, I like
And
that dystopian beige.
dystopian beige, yes. Should I end it?
Sure, go ahead.
Please like and subscribe. You can now listen to us on Spotify and your favorite podcast system. What do you call it?
Platforms, distribution
Platform.
channels. I
Distribution
don't even
channel,
know, and I did the whole
platform.
setup.
Yeah. Yes. And follow us on all these platforms as well. And stay tuned for our next episode next month. And thank you to Rene for such a lovely presentation and discussion that we've been having. And what I think I'm going to end with is history matters. And this is a progression that we're dealing with, but we just have to be vigilant about it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Cool.
thank you so much for your
I,
input. It was really, really valuable.
I'm
And
glad. Thank you.
thank you, everyone, and
Thank
see
you
you
so
next
much.
time.
Bye.
Bye.